be good this time, but Naz is doing a recording just in case. Hi guys, welcome to the Shadows of Ardorin Vampire slash Qalidran overview. We will be moving pretty quick, and we'll answer questions at the end, because I just think it'll be more productive if we do it that way. So yeah, we got quite a bit to get through, so we're just gonna jump right in with both feet. I am so out of breath. Okay, hello. So we're going to start with vampire mechanics, so just like the logistics of how they'll work, general vampire lore, and then we're going to do a quick and dirty overview of Qalidran, their culture structure, the careers and subsets that are there, and then we'll get into a Q&A. Duke is going to start us off with our Season 3 4 mechanics, and I'm going to go get water.
Yeah, okay, so vampires are the closest thing you guys are going to get to vanilla V Rising season. With the exception of ground bat form on day one. For those of you who are new here, ground bat form is the bat, except you don't go up into the air, you just move really fast. You can freely switch between your blood types. There is no restrictions on that for vampires. They are the only ones that can wield blood magic. This is a big change from the past, where, if you wanted to play a Daemon last season or a Fae last season, you could also use blood magic. Humans have always been excluded from it, but now every other race is. And you guys will find out in character potentially why.
Party. We love lore.
It's also one of the only ones that can wield unholy magic along with humans. Once again, you will find out in character why if you guys study. Blood bonds have changed. There is a beautiful chart on how it works on the website.
I do also have a slide for it later, so I'll do like a quick and dirty overview
beautiful.
A little later in the slide when we talk about culture and shit.
Beautiful. Sire lines and bloodlines have also changed. Sire lines are incredibly important with vampires, which I assume is going to be talked a lot about in the culture slide, because I haven't seen this presentation too much yet.
Yeah.
And the big change, you can't resire. So in the past, resiring has been used as kind of a cure-all for all issues relating to vampirism. We really wanted to make being a vampire mean something, and not just have it be like, oh, now I'm all of a sudden a vampire, or oh, now this person is my mom. It didn't really fit the setting that we wanted to do. And we have codified vampiric origins. There's 2 ways to become a vampire now. There's not 1,000 different ways. So
Party.
Yeah.
So I'm going to start with a brief overview of Qalidran. I did definitely put the wrong after fracture year here, so ignore the 968. It's like 972 or something. I was off by a couple years.
It's 945.
945! Woo! So the people of Qalidran use their own calendar. The other one is after fracture, which is defined by the collapse of the large empire that I'm forgetting the name of. Norris? No.
Nostera.
Nostera! We have too many N countries this season. Nostera, which was a country that covered the entirety of the Western continent. So it was top to bottom. It was the entire Western continent. So it's after fall, after fracture. That's Nostera. Post-apotheosis is the Qalidran calendar, and so you'll see PA throughout this presentation as their calendar, because the vampires are like, fuck your human calendar, that's irrelevant to us. For
those of you who struggle with dates as well, I am actively working on a timeline with all major events in the world that will be eventually available on the website, so you don't need to memorize this. But it's going to take some time because timeline softwares fucking suck to find a good one.
Woo! Yes, they do. I tried to make one, and then after I did like 20 events, it was like, yeah, you gotta pay us $20 a month to add any more events. And I was like, fuck that. Okay, so I'm just gonna do a quick overview of their history. So in 1 PA, the progenitor becomes a vampire. Blood magic now exists. In 2 PA, like around a year after he becomes a vampire, he bites the 5 descendants, is the 5 people that were turned directly by the progenitor, and they in turn start turning people, and vampirism begins to well and truly spread in earnest. In 3 PA, the 5 descendants found Qalidran, which was then a peninsula, as their own vampiric nation. So in 10 PA, they declare their wards, so they officially split Qalidran into 5 different sections, which are the Parlor, the Temple, the Harvest, the Navy, and the Guard, and they begin to sort their own descendants into those groups. I will post there will be a recording there. Don't stress too much. And then in 15 PA, they really start their slaughter of the mainland. They start well and truly raiding their then Frankelbergian neighbors. They start, attacking Ahania, one of their other close neighbors. They're well and truly they're starting to raid people. In 55 PA, all of the Luminance people kind of gather up a massive army from a bunch of different countries, and they try to siege their peninsula. The fourth descendant. I know it says fifth descendant on the slide. That's a mistake. The fourth descendant then uses Sunderfin, which is a giant sea serpent that is as long as the island is wide, to literally destroy the peninsula and sever Qalidran from the mainland. So, yes. The peninsula of Talair is sunk by Sunderfin, and Qalidran becomes an island nation. The turning point, so about 1,000 years later, or 50 years later, the Vampire Hunters Guild is formally founded. They start to do in-depth research into what makes vampires tick, what are their weaknesses, and that within 2 years, they discover their weakness to silver, their weakness to garlic, and vampires sort of start to lose battles on the regular, where, it really depends who's present. Vampire hunters are able to win battles. So that has persisted. Qalidran is still their biggest threat, is considered to be the Vampire Hunters Guild. They fucking hate those motherfuckers. Those motherfuckers hate them. So they're in near constant conflict with the Hunters. Qalidran is so aggressive as a nation that they don't really have any direct neighbors anymore. They've killed off the Frankelbergian queendoms that used to share their coast. They just retreated into Frankelberg. Those queendoms are not there anymore. Ahania lost some of their shoreline and has retreated back up into the mountains. And so they're kind of at a stalemate. Whenever there's, the VHG and Qalidran have regular skirmishes both at sea and on the shore. There's a lot of VHG that's kind of clustered in that area that's not formally any one particular nation, because they're like, okay, we're gonna protect Frankelberg from the Navy are vampirates, for sure. So yeah, they've the VHG has managed to clear most major vampiric settlements off of the mainland, but in return, Qalidran has also slaughtered all of their human neighbors to the point that there are no formal nations sharing a coast with them anymore. What are they doing now? Qalidran, over the centuries, has become very, very insular. They don't have neighbors. They don't believe in diplomacy. They believe that they're the only real legitimate nation. They're the only nation that serves the progenitor as a god. They're the only nation that's on the correct calendar. They're the only nation that is ruled by vampires, like the coolest kids in the world. Everyone's low-key pretty racist against non-vampires in Qalidran. They just have very strong, vampiric supremacy vibes as a nation. So yeah, they're focused on themselves. There's a lot of, kind of, not really, strife isn't quite the right word, but there's a lot of political games that are happening, because what else are you gonna do when you live forever? They fucking hate Dracula, by the way. Dracula came to them and was like, I am the true vampire god. I am the coolest vampire that's ever lived. And Qalidran, who revere the progenitor as a god, as the vampiric origin, said, no thank you, and firmly kicked him to the curb, and they hate his ass. They hate Draculan. They think the Draculan are an inferior, vampiric origin, so they view the Draculan as lesser. They're akin to animals in Qalidran's eyes. Dracula's bloodline, because Dracula did turn himself, he is his own bloodline. They consider the Dracula bloodline to be inferior to those of Qalidran. Dracula is bitch-made. He's the inferior vampire. He's an imposter, claiming the progenitor's throne. So Qalidric vampires hate Dracula and are very loudly haters of Dracula. They think he's a fucking loser. The duck line did not end up on the website, but they do think that Dracula's kind of like a duck. So bloodlines are everything in Qalidran. Your relation to the progenitor is your fucking life's blood. Your character, if they're from Qalidran, they'll introduce themselves as, how far they are removed from the progenitor, whose bloodline they're descendant from. So, you might be like, I'm Jill. I am the sireling of John. I am a sixth generation vampire of the fifth descendant's bloodline. So I'm six removed from the progenitor of the line, the fifth bloodline, and this is my history. This is the clan I belong to. They're very, very set on the rigidity of those bloodlines. So, severing your bloodline history is a big deal. It's very, very frowned upon. There are schisms between clans if they get too big. If it's like, yeah, there's 50 of us now, that's a bit much for our castle magics. We're going to split into one of our favored sons is going to yes, please do bloodline noble nonsense. There's a lot of infighting amongst the vampires that are around the same social rank. So members of the high table will gun for positions of other people at the high table. There should be a lot of really lean into vampire underhanded political tactics. They're definitely trying to undermine other people all the time. Lots of bloodline noble nonsense. There's not
If you've
really
seen Game of Thrones,
yeah.
it's like when Marjorie tries to marry every single fucking king that's ever lived to make her family better.
Yeah, a
It's
lot of
all
that. A lot of that.
just they don't physically fight each other, but it's all just positioning.
Yeah, starting a war in Qalidran would get you killed. I'll talk about this a little more when I talk about the city structure itself, but being caught being rebellious to the royal family is very, very dangerous. It basically means death. The royal family wears full masks at all times, and so other nobles sort of mirror that and also wear fancy masks. So especially when you're in a parlor session, everyone will wear masks for the parlor. It's not as common outside of the parlor spaces. People will wear half masks or shrouds. But if you're in a parlor setting, everyone is masked. It's also a, hide your, kind of like Orlais from Dragon Age, where it's you can't know what I'm thinking because I'm a hoity-toity noble and the mask helps me with that. It's kind of those vibes. So yeah. It's communism. Also, your blood, you get assigned blood. You put in a request of your favorite flavor, and the harvest may deliver you your favorite flavor, or they may not. But nobody starves in Qalidran. Everyone has blood tokens that they have their allotment of blood every month. Yeah. So that's sort of their culture. Bloodlines, this is how it works. It's your direct relations. So if Vampire 2 were to go sire 5 more people, you would have an innate bloodline formed with them immediately at time of their turning. They're natural. They just appear in your system of bonds as soon as that person rises from the grave. So if your sire turns somebody else, you are aware of it the moment that it happens. You're like, oh shit, I have a new vampiric sibling out there somewhere, because you feel that blood bond form. If one of your sirelings sires somebody new, you feel it in that moment. Yeah, you get a vibe. You're like, oh, I've got a new fucking, my sireling has a new sire, sort of thing. But if your sire's vampiric sibling were so Vampire 3 were to sire someone, you would not feel it because you're not a part of the same direct bloodline. So if Vampire 2 were to, have 20 people on this side, and Vampire 3 were to have 20 people on this side, and they're all a part of the same blood clan, this might be an example of Vampire 3 will go off and form his own blood clan with everyone that's directly his descendant once their clan gets too large. And those sort of schisms are not really seen as a negative thing, because it's oh, we're too big, we're too cool, let's split in two. But then you'd be considered sister clans, because you might have some mutual blood bonds between the two of you, and you'd ostensibly be close because you trace back to the same sire. So it creates these sort of networks of clans that are aligned with themselves, because technically they all, they're all descendant from the third descendant. So they might be closer to each other than clans that are all descendant from the second descendant, or the third, or the fifth. So it's supposed to, the Qalidran culture is very complicated because the relationships, it's the wreath effect, right? They're 6 seasons in over there. Everybody is kind of related to everybody, and it creates all of these issues. If you piss off Joe, oh god, Mark is his fucking vampiric brother, and so now he hates your ass also. And then his entire clan hates your ass, so it's a delicate political game, because if you burn the wrong bridge, suddenly there's 10 blood clans that are mad at you. So this is the vague shape of the capital of Qalidran. They refer to it as the capital. It's also just Qalidran. There's only one large vampiric city, so it's the name. It's more of a city-state than it is a proper nation. So this is the breakdown of it. So the slums are where people that do not have blood clans live. So if you are a rogue vampire, you're by yourself, you're newly turned, and you haven't made any friends, they live in the outside. It's not really destitute, but it is just kind of housing that was made by the castle itself. So the capital is all one castle heart. The castle heart is somewhere in the inner palace. People do not know where it is. It's not something you can view from the outside, but all of the walls of the city are controlled by one castle heart. So if you piss off the royal family, they will simply remove your roof, and then you will be locked into your yard, and they will delete all of your building, and you will just burn to death the next day. So revolutions don't go very far because they yeetus deletus your roof and your misbrazier, and then you burn to death in the sun. So yeah, you lose roof privileges. That said, the royal family doesn't really care about infighting between clans. They don't monitor that. So as long as you're not fucking with anyone at the high table or anyone in the inner palace, they are completely hands-off when it comes to clan versus clan beef. Unless it's something that gets to such a point where it has to be brought before the parlor, they really just don't fucking pay attention to it. The garden is where all of their vegetation is. It's kind of a forested area interspersed with castles. This is where the majority of vampires live. It's also where their market districts are. It's where their artisans, their blacksmiths, their architects, everybody that's, doing work lives. If you're somebody who doesn't have a clan, but you are a member of the Harvest or you're a member of the Navy, and so your clan is just whoever you're working with that week, you'd have a home in the terrace, or excuse me, in the garden. So you'd, they have apartment buildings here that are government run. So people that, just have a job rather than a blood clan, they live in the garden. So the garden is the bulk of the population as well as the bulk of the city. The terrace is where the nobles live, so people that have important blood clans that are doing important people things, they live in the terrace. The city also literally gets taller the closer you go into the center, but it's also deeper. So the palace, despite being having the smallest diameter, it's the tallest and the lowest point in the city because it goes all the way up and all the way down. So the inner palace is not small. Neither is the terrace, because the terrace goes all the way to bedrock, but also goes quite high into the air. The garden may have the largest land mass, but it's not the tallest. Neither is the slums, and so there's less verticality to it. So all of the areas, despite their size, are roughly the same size, excluding the slums because of the verticality of it. Yeah, the terrace is where all of the nobles live. It's much more common to see people wearing masks just out and about. You may also see red masks out and about in the terrace. We'll get into that in a little bit. The Crimson Hall is where the parlor is held. It's a fucking massive room. This is the size of 5 or 6 plots in game. It's huge. It is a part of the inner palace and a part of the terrace. It's a structure that's built between the two, and that's where parlor meetings are held. So we'll get into the Crimson Hall and its kind of logistics in a bit. And then there's the inner palace. The inner palace is the walled off section where those within 3 generations of the progenitor live. So the 5 descendants and the people that they bit directly all live in the inner palace. If you're not within 3 generations of the progenitor, you will never see the inside of the inner palace because they don't talk about what's in there. It's kind of a mystery of how the structure is, how their clans work. People don't really know. Which is why you have to be 4th gen max, yes, because it is an ongoing mystery that you may be able to get some information about over the course of the season of what is going on in the inner palace. The progenitor also is said to live in the inner palace, but he does not make any public appearances. Neither do the 5 descendants. Of the 5 descendants, the 2nd descendant is seen frequently, often because she's their religious leader. She's the Pope. She comes out and she makes
Naku, can you slow
services.
down by 5%?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
You're getting too excited
I'm
for the
sorry.
people.
Sorry, let me drink some water and then I'll slow down.
Yep, take a sip.
Yep.
Take a breath. You need air.
Guys, I've had coffee today and nothing else. Okay. So, the inner palace is largely a mystery. So nobody knows what's going on in there. Nobody's seen the progenitor. He doesn't make public appearances, but neither do the 5 descendants. That said, sometimes the 5 descendants are present for Crimson Hall meetings. And so people may know their voices, they know their sexes, but that's really it. Other than their voices through a screen, they're not seen. So yes, it's about 60 to 70% of the island of Qalidran itself is their single city. And then there's some undeveloped areas around it.
And the single city is one massive castle.
Yes, the single city is one massive castle with one massive castle heart. My NPC, I'll I'm okay broaching the subject because she's gonna be really loud about it from day one. Part of her goals is she loves vampires and she loves vampiric magic, and so she's like studying Castle Hearts. She loves Castle Hearts. She thinks they're the coolest thing since Swiss cheese, and so she'll be doing Castle Heart science to try and figure out how to emulate like the Qalidran castle, which is so big that it can house 10,000 vampires. So she's passionate about that. So if you want to do vampiric studies, reach out to my NPC. She'll be loud on the Waygates about it. Their tiles is in the tens of thousands probably, because it's a whole city. It's miles wide. Yeah. So moving on, I'm going to talk more in depth about the 5 wards of Qalidran, and sort of what their purposes are, what their breakdowns are, what life would be like if your character worked in the 5 wards. I will say, under the assumption, if you're working in any of the 5 wards, you are a vampire. If you are one of the few Mits or Talum that live in Qalidran, you live in the slums. It is not possible to climb the ranks in Qalidran as a non-vampire at all. They also do not have human servants. I'll talk about this more in a bit, but they do not live side by side with humans. Humans live in completely isolated communities and are only brought into the capital like the day before they're turned. Humans, well and truly, do not exist in Qalidran. So you cannot be like the human servant of a vampire family. They don't have those. Humans are food. So this is the parlor. So this is a map of the Crimson Hall. So the upper half is the half that is in the like within the inner palace, and then this is the half that's in the terrace. So the high table is a raised platform. It's like, think it gives Fire Lord vibes, where they have a metal screen, or like an old Chinese emperor where there's a metal screen between you and them, who you can't see through it, so you can maybe get like an outline. So sometimes you can see like vague outline of how many people are on the other side of the screen, but you also can't. So it's hard to tell who is present at meetings for the parlor, because there's a fucking metal screen between you and them. They're on a raised platform. Then there's the low table. The low table is comprised of the bulk of the nobles, so people that are of importance, people that are within 6 bloodlines of the progenitor. These are the people that get to speak during meetings. And then there's the coronation seating, so they just sit in like bench seats that are, imagine it more rows than this. It's hundreds of rows of bench seats. And then there's standing room, so anyone can come and watch parlor proceedings. I won't get too into the logistics of who's allowed to speak when, just because it's all laid out on the website. But this is what the Crimson Hall looks like. So you're looking up into the high table, and they look down on you. And then, yeah, this is what that space looks like. This pit is a fireplace. Yeah. If you're not at the low table, you don't get to speak, unless you sign a petition. And then moving on, so this is, so the parlor, if you're a parlor noble, you spend all your time schmoozing. You're trying to get you're either trying to like schmooze your way into a better like blood clan that's closer to the progenitor, or you're trying to form allies, with other clans. You're trying to get your things passed, you're trying to get yourself made like more room for your castle. That's like a big thing, is nobles will argue about tiles. So the amount of tiles that are set aside within the terrace or the garden for your clan are directly informed by rulings of the parlor. So the biggest thing that they argue about is space, because there's only a limited number of tiles in the city. And so if your clan falls out of favor, you may suddenly find yourself with 100 less tiles or 200 less tiles. And so they argue about tiles. So vampires are if you're from Qalidran, you're passionate about how much space you have, because the more space you have, the more important you are. I'm so ready for all of the Qalidran vampires to fight over that plot in the middle of Dudley, because it's the biggest plot in the game. Because yeah, they all want the Silverlight plot, they all want the big plot. Yeah, so they're nobles. So there's a lot of backstabbing between the low table and the congregation seating. People that are a part of the congregation seating, you're trying to angle your clan so that you get an invite to the low table. Because here's the thing, the parlor meets twice a year, and you yourself would not, May asked how you get closer to the progenitor if you yourself cannot be sired. You cannot be resired, but you could potentially maneuver your way into a blood clan that is ruled by somebody that is 4 generations removed. Like if your sire is 7 generations removed, but you gain the favor of somebody who's 4 generations removed and become very close with that person, and they make like an artificial bloodline tie with you, so they have a blood tie with you and they consider you one of their family, and you're like, yes, I am of this blood clan, even though I'm not, you know, like I'm of that blood clan, even though that's not my bloodline, that's still enough to get you more vampiric respect. So that's how you can kind of like angle your way up. So this is like the like there's a lot of political maneuvering. The parlor happens twice. The parlor meets formally twice a year in full, and they send out invitations on who gets to go to the low table roughly a week before they meet. And so there's some clans where it's 50-50 whether or not they end up at the low table. Sometimes they decide that, you know, if somebody who's really high up there, you know, they're 5th generations removed, but you know, they've always had a seat at the low table. They did something last year in the parlor to piss off the progenitor's descendants. They might randomly not get an invitation to the low table. They might be, you know, delegated to coronation seating and then move, you know, lose a bunch of their castle space in that meeting because they don't have anyone to talk about them during the low table meets. Because whenever the parlor meets twice a year, they both determine how many tiles everybody gets and how much blood everybody gets. So if you lose favor, you suddenly don't have a voice at the low table, you're suddenly going to be getting way less space and way less blood. So, yes, there are some clans, pretty much every clan that is headed by somebody who's 4 generations removed, they're always at the low table. It's the clans that are 5 or 6 removed that always have to fight for their places. So yes, if you're within 3 generations or 4 generations, you're always going to be at the table, just because of your, you know, relation to the descendants. But you know, if you lose favor, it does happen. There's people that get kicked out of the inner palace, and by that I mean they get executed. But yeah, so you know, you're never truly safe. You always have to be working to stay in the favor of the high table, because if you get compliant, they'll see that you're not kissing ass, and then you'll get kicked to the curb.
Guys, please save all your questions for the end. Thank you.
This is the temple. So the temple is the opposite of the Crimson Hall. It's also located directly below the Crimson Hall, and it goes down. So it's so if the terrace, the parlor goes up to the ceiling of the so it goes from like terrace level to the top of the inner palace. The temple is located directly below it, and the structure goes from the terrace to the ground. So the second descendant, who is the only descendant that regularly makes public appearances, she's the high priestess. She will stand on the stage with like 6-7 lookalikes who like look exactly like her in body shape, build, hair, and then one of them will be talking at you, but you don't know which one it is because she's like Padme. She runs around with body doubles. This is their religious structure. So, you know, the closer that you are to the progenitor bloodline wise is how many rows down you sit. Because there's also more vampires that are, you know, like 7, 8th generation than there are vampires that are 3, 4. Members that are within 3 generations will watch from the other side of the screen. So members of the inner palace, they also have windows because the inner palace is right here, and you'll see them sometimes sitting in their windows with their masks on, watching the religious, like, things. The temple does not meet at a regular occurrence. The high priestess will call the temple to order when she has something to say, basically, if she's like received a prophecy or received guidance from the progenitor. So the temple doesn't meet very often. They could meet as little as once a year. They could meet upwards of 10 times a year. It really just depends on what they got going on. So all of the vampires that when temple is in session, this room is big enough to fit everybody, just by the way. So everybody in the palace, regardless of like your social standing, this room can fit 10,000 people. So everybody that's not like, you know, tending to emergent medical situations is in this room when the temple is in session. So, oh, and if you're in the temple, basically you like, they have a religious text. It's the text of the progenitor. So it's just like a series of like recorded words of things that the progenitor said or the progenitor's teaching. A lot of it is just like very like blunt hierarchical. This is why vampire culture functions the way that it does. So if you're a member of the temple, you probably like you take confession from people. Basically, you guide. You might go through the slums and speak the good word of the progenitor, why the progenitor is the one true god, that sort of thing. The temple is is the smallest of the wards. There's not a lot of people in the temple that aren't like higher up. You can be like a low priest or priestess, and you're going around spreading the good word, but just know that you don't. There's not a ton of you. And if you do work for the temple, you probably live in the temple dorms. You probably don't have a blood clan of your own, though. You can if you want to, obviously, but just know that that's not super common. But the temple is the smallest of the wards because there's just the high priestess is yapping, and that's pretty much it. So the harvest. The harvest tends to all of the human communities. The shape of the island itself is kind of like a triangle with its edges very rounded. So the capital's in the dead center, and then there's small human communities that they all live, like the whole city will be walled off by a castle heart, and that castle heart will be owned by somebody who is a member of the harvest. So if you're really high up in the harvest, you probably oversee a community and you just live amongst those humans. You make sure that they're healthy, you make sure that their blood is being taken on like a rigid schedule, because if you accidentally kill a human, that's a big deal. If a human dies in your settlement, or if God forbid a disease breaks out in your settlement, you as a member of the harvest take the blame for that. So it's very, very important that the humans stay healthy and like they don't rebel. And so because in the effort of having humans not rebel, humans are allowed to retire once they reach like 60. You don't draw blood from them anymore because one, it doesn't taste as good when they get old and crunchy, and two, they tend to rebel when you drain them till they die. And so in an effort of healthy livestock is the way. So the harvest is they serve the third descendant. And their main goal is to maintain the health and the population of their human settlements. So, like, marriages between humans and the human settlements are arranged for the sake of keeping the populations genetically diverse. You ship people off between different farming communities to make sure that there's no inbreeding. It's all very rigid and structured and planned. Yeah. So the humans themselves, it's kind of like a catch-22. Some people really hate it. Some people are like, well, before I was kidnapped by the vampires of Qalidran, I had to fight bandits every day. And I haven't seen a single bandit since I was moved into the walls of Qalidran. And you know what? They give me my sheep, and they don't make me pay for anything. So it's okay. Because the human settlements are all very, like, strictly resource controlled. So the humans there don't have to buy anything. You pay in blood, exactly, but you don't have to pay in coin. They don't even have coins. If anything, they barter amongst themselves, but the villages are all given like their own quota. How many villages there are and the size and like locations of those villages are very, very high kept secret. So even as a member of the harvest, you don't know exactly how many villages there are. The routes to those villages are very, very tightly kept secrets, because they're aware of the fact that if their humans population was to die, so too would they. So the protection of those human populations is something that's very, very important in Qalidran. Some of them are coastal, some of them are not. There's some diversity there. But yeah, so people that are like very like doctor minded or very scholarly are encouraged to join the harvest, because it's a lot of logistics, right? Of keeping all of the populations fed, making sure that if one village has a shortage of grain, that they take a surplus from another that maybe had a better harvest year. There's a lot of moving of numbers, moving of shipments, making sure that food arrives on time to all of the villages. It's very logistics heavy. So if you're good at math, you probably work in the harvest. So the harvest is also the biggest group of vampires in Qalidran. Of the 5 wards, the harvest is the largest. So ruled over by the fourth progenitor, I keep saying progenitor instead of descendant. The 4th descendant is the Navy. So the Navy are the pirates. They bring home food, humans. They raid nearby settlements. They engage in piracy. They don't consider it piracy, though, because humans are inferior, and honestly, they're giving the humans better lives. They don't have scurvy anymore. Sunderfin is a thralled serpent, so if you are a member of the Navy, you've probably both seen the 4th Descendant and you've seen Sunderfin. The 4th Descendant, is very mysterious. They wear a mask. They're always on the back of Sunderfin. They never ride the boat with you, but you've seen them from afar, just kind of waving from the back of Sunderfin. They do a lot of naval combat with nearby nations. They do a lot of sailing. They're very, very boat heavy. They're the ones that have the most contact with both the Vampire Hunters Guild and the human populations outside of Qalidran in general. So they are, by and large, a lot of warriors, because if they're wandering outside, there's a chance at any time, at any day, they could run into a vampire hunter. And so they are very, very aggressive, and they have to, be taught to fight, because if you get caught with your pants down and a vampire hunter rolls up on you, goodbye. So the bulk of their military force is their navy. They're out there in the world. They're guys doing things. So that's the navy. They're also a very rigid structure. They're also responsible for ferrying people back and forth. So you could be a ferryman, and your purpose is to ferry people from the docks to the mainland. They also escort people from the docks into the city. You're not allowed to leave the city without a guard, because they do not want random vampires wandering around the brief Caladan countryside and stumbling upon human settlements. That's a big no-no. So it's very important. The Navy also does rounds on the outside of the island to make sure that no boats have docked. And if boats have docked, they go and hunt those people down and kill them. So they do a lot of general, they're the army and the Navy. The Guard deals with strictly inner city protections, and there's two subgroups. So there's the Reds, which are they guard both the halls of the inner palace and the exterior of the inner palace. So they patrol the terrace. They are made up of people within 3 generations. So these are all people that were bitten directly by one of the 5 descendants, and they have red masks. They are always masked. They have keys to the main castle heart, so they're able to move in and out of the inner palace. They're kind of a mysterious group. You cannot be one, but they are people and they're also your boss if you're a gray mask. So 1 red mask might oversee 30 gray masks. Gray masks are just like the general city guard. They patrol in the terrace, in the slums, outside of the walls, and on top of them. And they're people that are at least 4 generations removed from the progenitor, so you can be a gray mask. They have their own sigils. It's very, very common for guards to live in guard sigils, so because they want people that are of the gray masks to be politically neutral. They don't want them to let their uncle break the rules. So a lot of people that join the Guard have forsaken their bloodlines for the sake of protecting the city. So it's considered kind of an honor. It's something. It's oh yeah, they gave up their ties to their bloodlines and their rights of succession to their bloodline because they're a Guard now. They're politically neutral, because they don't want guards to be doing favors for somebody in the parlor that they shouldn't be. So they're literally the guards. There are people that exist outside of the wards, people who just live in the garden, who are architects or artisans or merchants, who aren't considered a part of any of the wards because they're just a guy. So you can also just be a normal citizen of Qalidran who's not a noble, not working for any of the 5 wards, and is just a person. That's also possible. So yeah, that's the brief overview of Qalidran's culture, its, literal structure, and we're just going to open it up to a Q&A now, because I'm sure you have burning questions about what it means to be a vampire, because that was very surface level. There's a lot more detailed write-ups on Qalidran, so please go read it.
Feel free to ask questions about anything with vampirism as well. Qalidran is the majority of vampires, but you guys can ask anything. Holy fuck. Okay.
Let's see. How does a sire turn another? Is it just a bite, or the whole drain your victim and feed them your blood thing? So that's a very, very good question. You have to bite somebody while they're still alive. If you bite a corpse, it will not stick. You cannot turn a person that is already dead. The turning only happens if somebody is still alive. They have to both be drained at least a little bit of blood, and they have to have vampiric blood in their system. And the other important thing is that it's not immediate. You gotta let that bitch sit until the next time the moon rises, and then you'll find out whether they rise as a thrall or they rise as a vampire. So it's not you put your wrist to somebody's mouth and the change happens in 20 real life minutes. You have to wait until the next time the moon rises. So it can depend, because it can depend on, when the next time the moon rises. It's going to be different if you turn them 2 hours before sunset, and if you turn them, at midnight, because then you have to wait till the following evening. What kind of power does a sire hold over their thrall? Very much so. Thralls are truly mindless. They have no personality. They are incapable of speech. They are just like in-game thralls. So you cannot play a thrall because you would be playing a dog. And that's not one of our races that are an option because they're neither a human nor a vampire. So you cannot be a thrall. Sires hold absolute 100% control over their thrall. It's basically just a tool that you have. It is not a person. It does not have a personality. If somebody's sire dies, you are left with a permanent broken blood bond within your kind of like weave of blood bonds. It is something that is very painful. It is something that is a source of perpetual grief and loss. And it kind of physically hurts and will for a very, very, very long time. So, you know, you're not gonna like die if your sire dies, but it fucking hurts and you'll be thinking about that shit every day.
It's emotional damage. It's not physical pain.
Yes.
It's damage of like your very being itself.
Yeah, that shit hurted. Take psychic damage. Do humans in the slums have a basic understanding of vampire politics? There are no humans in the slums. Humans live exclusively in human pockets. There are no humans in the slums. The people in the slums are people that are myths or Talum, or they are vampires that do not have a blood clan that they belong to. They're either risen or they've been kicked out of their blood clan. There's no human sailors and there's no human captains. Humans have literally no power. The only place you will find a human in Qalidran is in a locked human settlement. They have no control of their destiny. They do not have the ability to leave. They are there until they are moved somewhere else where they die. Main form of travel to and from the island is boat that is controlled by the Navy. Is there a sort of identity check if a vampire needs to travel from Qalidran and leave it? Yes. You have a kind of like a metal seal that's like, this is my clan, this is where I'm from. So you have papers, you have like an ID. What happens to diseased humans or humans whose blood can't be taken? They are killed and then buried. If you are, they're pretty ableist. So if a human is you know, not able to survive on their own or does not have good quality blood, they will just be killed because they'd be a waste of resources. So yeah, grim, but that is the reality for them. Is there a named faction of Qalidran rebels? No, Qalidran rebels are rare and they are quickly snuffed out. If you're like rebelling against your blood clan, they don't give a fuck. If you're rebelling against the city of Qalidran itself and the Inner Palace, the moment you are discovered, you will be locked in the Fifth Hell until you are dead. They leave you in their underground prison to starve to death. Can vampires who use light magic use it without being harmed in RP, such as covering their hands in light magic? We are not allowing vampires to roll in with light magic.
Yeah, we are. They can earn it.
They can earn it, but they can't start with
not
it.
rolling. Yeah.
Yes. So find out in character, because you don't know yet. Our non-humans uses cattle, or I mean food. They do have a small degree of like farm animals, especially in the garden area. They might have some like wolves and shit that they use as pets and as a minor source of food. But creature blood is kind of seen as being odd, just because they have such a robust human population. It's like, why would you choose inferior food if we've got Joe Bob blood? Are there living descendants to Dracula? Can a PC be a descendant? Just as always, we do not allow characters to have any formal relationships with any V-blood at Whitelist. It's a form of power gaming to claim that you have a relationship with Quincy or Dracula or Maha, so we've never allowed people to have any direct relationships with any V-blood, and that includes Dracula. We are also considering Draculan their own species this season, so you cannot whitelist as a Draculan because they're their own thing, and they're not one of our listed races.
That being said, you could be a vampire who loves Dracula and
you can think he's the coolest thing since Swiss cheese. You could be like, because in our minds, like Cassius and Elena and Styx, they're just vampires that he stumbled upon in the world of various origins that then in turn joined his army. They're not necessarily his descendants because that's not written in their lore. And except for like, I think Elena may have been turned by him. But otherwise, they're just dudes that he found. So you could be some vampire who thinks that Dracula's cool. Just keep in mind that Noctum is not a joinable citizenship faction this season and will not be this arc. So if you want to join the Legion of Noctum, we're not doing that this season. We're not going to be giving them that sort of animation. So even if you think that Noctum's really cool, you can't gain Noctum citizenship and they will not be joinable this season. Can we get some examples of how a vampire could be self-made risen? Yeah. Big ones are either latent magic in the world rescued you from your grave, where there was like some blood magic storm and then you woke up as a corpse in the middle of it, or a ritual gone wrong. Either someone was trying to sacrifice you and oops, they turned you, or you were trying to turn yourself immortal and oops, you vampired yourself. Even if you rose yourself, keep in mind that you have to be under 300 years old. Until the progenitor became a vampire, the magic of blood magic did not exist in the world, and so it was impossible to turn yourself prior to his existence. If a vampire sneezes and someone says "bless you," does the vampire take holy damage? That's Welrons. If you say "bless you" in Welrons, they take that as an insult because they believe that divinity is a sham. So if you say "bless you" or "bless your heart" in Welrons, people take personal offense to that. But vampires themselves, I don't think they give a fuck. I don't think that would be a turn of phrase though. In like, I don't think vampires say "bless you." I think that'd be weird. Ashbon has a couple of questions. Will figures like the progenitor and the first descendants and third generation get names? Yes. Eventually they will be on the table in some capacity. Some of them won't be. Some of them will be. Find out in character.
They all do have names.
They all do have names.
Part of the mystique is that
yeah.
you don't know them.
Yep. So you may, find like I have an idea for a dungeon where at the end you find a journal left behind by a descendant, for example, and so you could learn their name and the names of some of their buddies, if that ends up being a dungeon design that we go with for the season. So they themselves are kind of like baked into the world lore because they are the origin of vampirism, right? So that's part of the reason why, by design, they're not present and you can't be a part of them. Because if you were within 2 generations of the origin of vampirism, they would probably tell you how he became a vampire, how he brought blood magic into the world. And so because we don't think it makes sense for you to roll in as somebody who's within 2 generations and not know that information, that's why we're not letting players whitelist as within 3 generations of the first vampire, because it would be bad RP, because you wouldn't we wouldn't want you to power game having that information from the jump, because it would take away a lot of the discovery that characters are going to have to do over the course of the season, and 2, it would give you an unfair advantage if you could just come in with that. It's lame. You don't get to come in with the origins of the world.
We want you to find the recipe for the sauce. We don't just want to give you the sauce.
Yeah. And it doesn't make sense for you to be directly related to the sauce and not know the answer. So we're just not going to let you be related to sauce. So clans are formed. Ashbon also asked, what generation are clans formed? Are they entirely player-based? Oh, it becomes some official clans that we can join. If you want to be a member, so this is kind of a fun little spoiler, I have plans to write letters from Qalidran. So the parlor will send out regular missives to everybody who whitelists as being a part of a Qalidran clan. You will just get Qalidran mail. You will have a Discord tag upon character creation of being from Qalidran, and you will get spam mail from the parlor, both to like make it seem like it's more alive and it's something that impacts you. You'll get parlor invitations. So if you in character are from a 4th generation clan, you'll see your clan leader's invite to parlor meetings. You can have the opportunity to go offline for a week and go to the parlor meeting and then come back with information. There is a formal and official process of making a clan. If you want to split from your clan because it's too large or because there's something going on, that's something that you'd like petition the parlor for, and they'd either approve your schism and then give you tiles to make your own castle, or they deny it and force you to stay or go to the slums. Because again, there's a limited number of tiles and there's no unclaimed space 300 years in. So if you want to make your own clan, you have to formally petition for it and request space for it. If they don't have human servants, what would they use as servants? Could we reflect this in game at all? They use thralls. So if you request a thrall, you're given like a human, like an ex-vampire hunter or somebody from the mainland that they have no interest in adding to the human populations in the harvest towns. Those humans are split up to be made into thralls. You have to turn them into a thrall immediately upon acquiring them. That's like a law, and if you're caught breaking it, you get murderized. But yes, they have thralls. They have servants. And so yeah, you dominate humans and you use those thralls in game still. Or a vampire, you could have a servant that is a vampire from like a 10th generation or is a risen vampire. So they don't necessarily have political sway, but they're a part of your clan as a maid, or they're a part of your clan as a butler or a stable boy, So a lot of the vampires who are of like the very removed from the progenitor or the risen vampires, their place in collegiate culture is serving the clans of other vampires. So they in turn are a part of that, third generation, fourth generation clan. So they've got a little bit of sway. But, they're certainly not going to be the person talking during parlor, but they could consider themselves a part of that clan if they work their little booty off and come in with a good reference. How do they get into the Crimson Hall if they are not allowed in the palace? So the Crimson Hall is a room that stretches between the two, but there's a metal screen that divides the section that's in the terrace and the section that's in the I can go back to that slide. So the part that's in the inner palace is behind this metal screen. And this metal screen has, red masked guards every like 2 feet. So you got a fat chance in hell in getting through the metal screen into the inner palace. And when the parlor is not in session, the doors to the Crimson Hall are closed, and there's always like 10 people just like in there, standing guard, because it is the only entry point into the inner palace that's not stone wall. Everywhere else it's stone wall all the way around, and siege golems are illegal. So yeah, there's always guards in this room, even if parlor's not in session, because they don't want people getting into the inner palace. Is there a naming/title scheme we can follow, or are we given some freedoms in this? There is not a rigid one. I'd say that people, like, it's as long or as short as you want it to be. I gave an example in the vampire culture section of how, in the collegiate culture area, of how someone might introduce themselves. So yeah, as little or as much as you want to do. If you really want to lean into it, you can really lean into it. If you don't, you don't.
The thing about it that you have to remember is, third generation and fourth generation, well, pretty much every vampire and every human on the island isn't from there. Like, very rarely would someone go to a human settlement and be like, you're part of my bloodline.
They have to be shown to be exceptionally gifted.
Yeah, like the original 5 descendants, they went out into the world and found people that were worthy of doing it. So, you might have a third generation guard who was, from Saloon and lived in the desert their whole life and somehow survived and became like this warlord. And it's like, yes, you will be our captain of the guard. And then you might have someone from the Hallowed Mountains who's a fucking monk who's like, you are incredibly wise. You will be useful for us. Come join us. So you can be from anywhere, because you could have been taken from anywhere.
And the name, like the sort of like approach to how people view their blood clans is honestly, a lot of times it's directly in form of where the oldest members return from. A clan that's overseen by a guy that used to be a monk in the Hallowed Mountains is probably going to have a very different approach to how they view their fellow vampire than a guy who was a warlord in Saloon. And so because of that, like, the naming conventions of the characters and their national origins before they were turned is going to vary dramatically from vampire to vampire. There could be vampires that, it's like, yeah, I'm from Saloon and I think Saloon is like a great place. And so everyone that I've turned is from Saloon. But, there could be another clan where they're like, well, I just turned scholars. So all of the scholars I've turned are from every country, because I just go around and I find nerdy humans that are really smart and then I turn them. So they seek out people, because vampires can't have children in our current lore. So in order to continue their bloodline, they seek out humans with promise to turn. Turning is something that's very intentional. A lot of times it has to be approved by the parlor, because population control. They don't want you to just go out and turn 30 people for the sake of making your clan bigger. They don't want you to sneak tiles. You'll get smacked for that. Scroll asked, did vampires create castle magic? They did. The progenitor was the first person to use castle magic and the first person to make a castle heart. What does vampire culture think of werewolves? They fucking hate them and they will kill them if they find them. There was an incident 5 years ago where they brought a new human into a human settlement that was a werewolf, and that werewolf turned everybody in town, and so they had to kill that human settlement because they were all werewolves and they hate the taste of werewolf blood. And so, yeah, werewolves, if you are a werewolf and you get discovered, they isolate their humans now after that. Humans are isolated for like 2 months before they're integrated into human populations, because they do not want lycanthropy there. They also are like the Vampire Hunters Guild and they consider it a disease. So, collegiate vampires hate werewolves. They're a threat to their human populations and therefore bad. If you are not a descendant of the progenitor, what do the vamps of Qalidran think of you? Are they just as aggressive or more like fucking you? It kind of depends. Like I said, you can work your way as a risen vampire into a clan that is very close to the throne. You can't work your way into the inner palace. You'll never see the inner palace if you are not within 3 generations of the progenitor. But you could belong to a clan that has a representative at the low table as a risen vampire if you're like a really great blacksmith. You know, they might hire you and give you like manual blood bonds where they go and they create blood bonds with you, so you have a blood bond with everyone in your sigil because they consider you a part of their clan even if you don't have the bloodline tied to it. But you'd have to be exceptionally skilled to work your way into an important clan. A lot of people that are skilled artisans are just, you know, they're members of the garden. They live there, they have their own store, you know, they're a renowned blacksmith, so the parlor approves them having their own little workshop, and they work and live in their little workshop, and they don't have a sigil, but they just live in the garden. And then there's notes. Vivian asks, do vampires do blood extraction themselves, or do humans drain their blood, bottle it, and hand it over to officers? They do the blood extraction themselves to ensure that it is not poisoned. Yeah, because I'm sure
Yeah,
that
it's like a blood clinic or a blood drive.
Yep.
You go in, you're taken good care of, you're given milk and cookies and some apple juice, and they take their blood, they pat you on the back, they send you on your way.
Dread this asked how polluted is the slums? Would this region have an area where they have a landfill or a vermin nest area, considering this place is treated like a big castle? The slums is kind of a misleading name because it is still very, very patrolled by the guard, because they don't want anyone to, like, you know, get up to naughty in the slum. So it is just as patrolled and just as populated as the garden. There's just not really any shops. So it's really just people that don't have anywhere else to go live there. So it's not dirty, it's just poor. They don't have sway, so they, like, furniture's, you know, you gotta buy it yourself. It's not provided to you. You get the minimum quota of blood every month. So, you know, it's not dirty, but you just don't have excess. You don't have anything in excess. And you have no political sway to make your life better. So really, if you're in the slums, your best bet is to, like, join a shop, get an apprenticeship, or try to get in as a clan, as a servant, and then work your way up.
Or join the guard, or join the navy, or
join the guard, or join the navy, or join the harvest. Yeah, so there's
do something cool for
yourself. There's a lot of ways out of the slums. Some vampires prefer to live in the slums. They're like, yeah, I'm just gonna live here. I've got my shack. Someone comes by and brings me 2 bottles of blood a month, and I just live here, and it's great. No notes, no complaints. So there's vampires that choose to live in the slums that are just like, yeah, vampire hunters can't get me here. The sun can't get me here. They give me food for free, and they're just content with that. Off-region question, would this region take inspiration from Tencent Trek in production? Not at all. They are very much like magic is the purest thing, castle magic is the purest thing, so science in general is kind of frowned upon because it can, 1, be considered a waste of resources, 2, it has the potential to negatively impact the environment and thus the human settlements, and thus put all of us in danger, especially since reports of Gloomrot in general has gotten back to them. They are very anti-transcendum in particular because they do not want that to happen to their humans' water. Is there a rough estimate of risen vampires in that region? Like, are they kept tabs on by the bitten of their numbers, or are they just treated in a different sense? So because the Navy has to escort you into the city, they know for sure hard numbers of risen vampires at all times. They know where you settle because they assign you a shack. So the population is highly, highly, highly controlled. If there was ever a situation where all of the houses in the slums were full, they'd just turn you away at the dock, and they'd be like, hey, sorry, we don't have any rooms in the slums right now. Try again next year.
Yeah, like, they're not going to turn you away because you're risen, but the fact that you are risen and you're not bitten from the line of the progenitor, so on and so forth, it is a stain on you in their culture. They are very proud of their heritage from the first vampire. Going back to the Transcendum thing too, what you got to remember is 328 years before the start of the season, in that whole time, they were the only people really with magic until Drac came about, and then the Luminants got the light magic. So the fact that they are very, all of this is about their haughtiness, how much they think they're better than everyone. They got magic. They're the chosen people. They are the supreme beings, the apex predators, the ones above all. So they're going to use that. and they're going to leverage that. And all the new magic that's coming in, it just makes them better.
Mm-hmm.
It
There is a bit of
it's
schism
really
between vampires that think that blood magic is the purest and only best form of magic, and those
Mhm.
who are embracing it and learning it. So that's kind of like a it's unsure which way the parlor and the high table will decide, like whether they'll outlaw other magic or whether they'll welcome it. It's so new that they're just really beginning to study it and see what sort of impact it has on them as like a national scale. Tansy asked what happens to humans in Calidron who get too old. Do they get sent to the farm over the hill? Distinctly, no. I did mention this in the culture somewhere, I think in the human settlements area. They found over 300 years that humans tend to get mad when you murder their parents, and that leads to them rebelling. So instead, humans get to retire. Once they're too old to safely draw blood from, they just get to hang out until they die naturally of old age. Because they found that the harvest has a mentality that it's in their best interest to keep their humans reasonably happy, so that they don't rebel.
Yeah, they live very good lives. Like
Pretty cushy.
their streets are clean. They have nice things. They don't ever need to want for anything. All that they have to do to earn this is give a little blood. They don't get attacked by the VHG. They don't get there's no werewolf attacks. The monsters of the world can't get to them. And vampires, for the most part, are pretty nice to them because they need them. And these humans need the vampires to protect them. So there is it's like a, um, it's like a remora, or what are those little things
It's a
called that stick on
symbiotic
the side of
relationship.
sharks?
Remora.
What are those little things on the side? Yeah, remora. It's like a remora on the side of a shark.
Ashmon asked if we could respond to official mail from Calidran. You sure can. Just respond to
I
whoever
will write
sent
you
it to
back.
you. Yeah. In order to be from Cald Mail, would you need to be a part of a clan from there, or would you just need to be risen from there? Yeah, just say in your note in your whitelist that you're from Calidran, and you'll be automatically put on the mailing list.
Yeah, everyone gets the newspaper, not just the rich people.
Yeah.
Have there been any major campaigns by humans/luminants against Calidran? Yes. Uh, there's really been two major ones. The one where Calidran absolutely fucked up the peninsula because Calidran wasn't always an island. It was a peninsula, and Sunderfin body slammed the peninsula, killed thousands of soldiers. If you guys want to see the full details on that on the website in the miscellaneous regions, there's something about the Shattered Peninsula, and Naku wrote a great bit about that war.
Yep.
The second one, do we want to tell them about the second more recent one, Naku?
I mean, yeah, you can if you want. I'm eating dinner, so go for it.
The second one was Dracula,
Yeah, the Hades
trying to
Hex.
wage war against Calidran to assert his dominance. And Sunderfin sent him fucking packing. He never even made landfall.
They said
He
bye, girl.
fucked up some ships, but yeah.
But there is a movement in Luminance right now to try and siege Calidran again, because now they're armed with holy magic for the first time. So they haven't
Mhm.
started that war, but the humans are being pretty loud about that. There's certain segments of Luminance that want to lay siege to Calidran now that they're armed with holy magic.
Ashspawn asks another good question. Are vampires turned into clan vampires allowed to keep in touch with their old culture? Yeah. There's
That's gonna really
nothing
depend,
stopping you.
like, on your clan. There are probably certain blood clans that are like, we turned you, we gave you the gift, your old life is dead. And then there's other people that are like, yeah, bro, I don't care. So
Yeah, like the
it depends
scholarly
on the.
people probably want you to stay in touch with your fucking nerds.
Yep.
It's the same thing with like the Ark of them. There are Calidric vampires in the Ark of them.
Yep. My
Because there are
NPC will be
clans who see the knowledge.
is a Calidran vampire who will disappear whenever there's anything happening in Calidran. So I have time to play my player character this season. So she'll be there half the time. And then half the time she'll be like, I'm going home. I'm going to parlor.
Kassira asked a couple questions. Are there vampires from Calidran who go AWOL or otherwise depart and neglect their political duties? Yes. There probably have been. It's hard to leave, but you can leave if you try really hard. To what extent do Navy Masks go try and hunt down the escapees if they do a bad?
Depends on degree of bad. If you try to start a revolution, they're probably going to hunt you to the ends of the earth. If you just didn't pay your taxes or whatever, you just get barred from returning to the city. They've got like a book full of people that are, their faces are memorized by the ferryman, and so if you try to come back, they just kick you out. You're barred. And if you don't have proof of your citizenship, you're going to start from zero. So even if you sneak your way back in, it's only a matter of time before you get discovered.
Unless, somehow your bloodline made good and all of a sudden you're viewed as the traitor to your bloodline. So your own bloodline might hunt you even.
Yep.
Because you're dishonoring all of the people who come after you.
Yep.
Population control, how do they do it? Are turnings approved? Does turning too many people get you in trouble? Yes, to
Both.
all of those. Turnings are approved within the clans, within Qalidran. Now, if you go off and you're on some grand adventure and you turn a couple people and you come back and you don't bring them with you, how would they know? They're not going to care that there's more vampires out in the world. It's just the vampires in Qalidran. But because of resource management, blood management, land management, if you go and turn 30 people, you might find that there are 31 new corpses in Qalidran. Will there be pre-made vibes that people will have in regards to clan relations? Clan X has rivalry with Clan Y, etc. I don't plan on writing anything like that. Naku might, because
Not really.
she likes.
I think that if you're more likely to ally with clans that are descendant from the same descendant as you, so you're more likely to have good relationships with other clans that can trace their lineage back to the second vampire than like the third or the fourth. But the infighting itself, we really want to leave up to just like flavor of clan story. You can be a vampire clan that's hated by everybody. You can be somebody who tries to schmooze and make allies across the lines of all descendants. It's up to players. It's just for flavor. You can have as much or as little enemies as you so choose.
Does Qalidran ever try to improve a human's blood quality? Absolutely.
That's what
The
the
way that they
harvest
do it is
does.
they literally do it through selective breeding. The same way that we have all of the plants that we have, all the crops in the world and everything, it's all selective breeding. If you have a baby who is born as a mutilated, twisted, diseased child, the vampires will probably come in and take it from you and kill it, because it serves no purpose. Can someone
Because
play?
infanticide is one of our banned topics. Yes, it probably happens. Please don't have a character that like has that very in depth in their backstory.
Yes.
Just because we don't want dead babies to be a focal point of any story, because sometimes people in real life have miscarriages and stuff, and we don't want to trigger anyone. So while that's something
Indeed.
that nebulously, vaguely happens, it's not ever going to be the focal point of any of our stories, and so it should never be the focal point of any of yours, because we don't want to trigger people who have infertility issues or have struggled with miscarriages in the past.
Indeed. Can someone play an escaped human? We have talked about this. There are two ways you could potentially play a human from Qalidran. One is if a noble brought you around because you're a blood bag and you've always been the blood bag from their house. I wouldn't bank on playing escaped human because you're going to need a pretty compelling story for us to want to consider. You just can't say like, oh, I escaped the walled city and did this and this and this and this and this. If a vampire defects from Qalidran and takes a human with them, maybe. It's a hard thing for us to go on and approve because if we have 20 escaped humans from Qalidran, odds are we're going to have to come in as Qalidran Navy or Guard and try to reclaim you guys or kill you. And that's just not a story we're interested in pursuing as a staff.
Also,
in
keep
favor
in
of
mind,
other things.
they've had 300 years at this point to figure out how to keep the humans on that fucking island. And so, like, even if you were to get out of the city, how are you going to get back to shore? There's a giant sea serpent out there and the fucking navy circling the island constantly. Like, in theory, maybe, but like Duke said, you'd have to have a really compelling, like, fully written, this is how I did it, because it'd be very, 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 very difficult. They're professionals at this. The Harvest and the Navy's two main jobs are keep human in or keep human out. Is Sunderfin friend-shaped? Sunderfin will fucking eat your ass if you get too close. Sunderfin is enthralled and almost always in the presence of the fourth descendant. So the Navy makes a habit of like bringing Sunderfin snacks if they know that Sunderfin will be nearby. So they might like feed the snake and be like, "Oh guys, I fed the snake." But Sunderfin is largely hostile to everyone that is not of the descendants directly, as in the 5 of
Is
them.
is there a way for a non-bitten vampire to join a bloodline? I think Naku talked about that. Yes and no. You
You
can't join like
cannot.
their sire line, but you can have a
Yes.
blood bond with
You will
them.
always have your bloodline. So if you got turned by somebody who makes it so, like, let's say you're a part of, you get bitten by a guy named Steve, and Steve's bloodline quirk is that he can never fucking sleep. You will forever be plagued by not sleep-itis until you find a solution that is not resiring, because resiring does not exist. You only get turned once. So the quirks and banes of your and boons of your bloodline, you're fucking stuck with them until you find a compelling magical reason to no longer have them. You can be formally inducted into a clan. So you would not, like, so let's say you get turned by a vampire named Betty. You are forever Betty's bloodline. But you, as somebody, you go to Qalidran, you get hired into the household of a lady named Eleanor. Eleanor ends up really liking you. She forms an artificial blood bond with you, so it functions the same as a blood bond, but it's something that you had to form manually through ritual. And everyone else that lives in that house, they also form a blood bond with you because they really like you. You would introduce yourself still as a part of Betty's bloodline because that will never change about you. You are still Betty's bloodline, ninth removed from the progenitor, but you're of the blood clan of Eleanor. And so people would address you as though you are your relation to Eleanor. So people would know from the way that you introduce yourself that you're not a part of Eleanor's bloodline, but you can be a part of her clan. You can be a part of her sigil. So there's
It's like being
kind
a
of,
ward.
yeah. So you'd be like adopted, and then you'd be given artificial blood bonds so that you're in practice pretty identical to them, except you have a different vampiric origin and a different vampiric bloodline. But they don't really shy away from forming like those artificial quote unquote blood bonds with people that aren't a part of their bloodline. Like if you have been in a sigil for 50 years, you probably have at least one blood bond with somebody in that fucking house. Breaking them is a very big deal and very painful. So they don't do it. You're not going to form a bloodline with some guy that you're hiring to be your gardener for the year, and then his contract ends and he won't be a part of your blood clan anymore after that. So if he's in your sigil on a contract basis, you're not going to form a blood bond with him, but he'll introduce himself as being a part of your sigil for the next year while he's there.
If we enter as a fourth generation and leader of a minor clan, how much sway would we have from the get go? In the theater of the mind Calidran stuff, you can speak at parlor meetings. If you want to introduce yourself to other Calidric vampires as being a fourth generation, and you want to lean into that shit and whip your thing around, go for it.
Have fun.
How much other people respect that is not something that we are going to enforce, because if there is someone playing a 15th generation from scholar from the slums who is like, I want to go explore the world, I'm going to join the Arc of them, and they never took part in any of the parlor antics, they'll be like, wow, that guy's a fourth generation, roll their eyes and walk away. This is all for background, for flavor, to give structure to vampirism, because we've never had to have structure. How people interact with that structure is entirely on them. We are not going to tell you how to play your character. We're just going to give you the rails on which to make your character.
So, Ashbun said, not a question, but I would really love a family tree with names, at least of the third, so we can trace our lineage all the way back to the progenitor. The names of the 5 descendants are a secret. Because if they ever want to go out in public, they don't want someone to be able to overhear their name and be like, oh shit, that's not just somebody from the inner palace. That's the 5th descendant themselves in the flesh. So they have titles, and their titles are synonymous with their ward. So the head of the harvest, the high priestess of the temple, the head of the leader of the parlor. So they have like those.
The leader of the parlor is literally just called the parlor.
Yeah. So their titles are synonymous with the ward that they oversee. So you might call the head of the harvest just the harvest if you were to see them in person. The vampire of the temple would be the high priestess.
If you want to give a title to the third gen that you are descended from, I'm not going to say no.
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't really have you might have some relationship with them, but being a fourth gen, you wouldn't have a big relationship with them. It's like the joke in Family Guy where rich guy has a baby, gives the baby a head pat, and then doesn't touch him more than a handshake for the next 18 years of his life till he's a grown person and, can contribute to the family business. That's what it's like.
Fourth generation
Um,
vampires in particular are in a very unique place in collegiate culture because they are turned by somebody who's a member of the inner palace, but they've never seen the inside of the inner palace themselves. So fourth generation vampires are often they're sought out specifically because they're like early on when Qalidran was filling its borders, they're like, okay, we need capable people. So they went out, and the descendants and the descendants' direct descendants, so the third generation vampires, they went out and they found people that were very capable, people that had really good skills, that were experts in their fields, and then they turned them. And they said, okay, you're now a fourth generation vampire, you are the founding member of the Terrace, go forth and make a blood clan. Bring in people that you trust, go turn humans that you think are useful. And so the early years, like the first 50, 60 years of Calidran's existence, was expanding and establishing those bloodlines. And so if you were playing a fourth generation vampire, a lot of your early history was being a part of the founding of Calidran, seeking out excellent and talented people to be a part of your blood clan, and then turning 10 people, and then having those 10 people also turn 10 people, and establishing your prominence with the skills and talents of the people that you chose to turn. But you yourself would have a very hands-off experience with the third, like the person that turned you. That third generation vampire, you probably met them when they turned you. You know their name and their face. You may only know their name if they chose to never take off their mask. But since then, you probably, they may come over and drop in on you and see how your blood clan's doing, give you advice, give you money, give you supplies. But they're a hands-off rich dad. They give you a loan of $3 million and then they leave. So you
you're a trust
probably,
fund. You're a trust fund baby who doesn't really get to interact with the guy whose trust fund you benefit from.
yes. And you can make up a name for them because there's like 2,000 vampires that are a part of the Inner Palace. So, and most of those vampires are third generation vampires because there's only 5 second generation vampires. So you can make up a name for them. We don't care. Just include it in your whitelist.
Nadsder might have missed this, but does Calidran have the equivalent of an Inquisition? Yeah, it's the guards.
The red
Just full
masks.
stop.
So
It's the red masks.
if you're up to no good and a red mask comes to investigate instead of a gray mask, you're in trouble.
Yeah, you're about to get your roof taken off, your mist brazier turned off, and you're going to be left out in the sun to rot. Okay. This isn't a question, but Fopsy says risen vampires treat like bastards in Westeros, pretty much.
Yeah. You gotta prove your worth. You gotta roll in with job skills and or resources to get anywhere. There's also way, way, way less risen vampires than there are vampires that are bitten. Because if you think about it, it's so easy to just go bite some guy. It is much harder to be turned during a foul, mysterious, necrotic ritual.
Now,
Risen
you might.
vampires are also much more common to be made in the last 5 years than in the aforementioned 300, because it was much harder because humans couldn't use blood magic. So to create a vampire accidentally 300 years ago was a very different situation than creating a vampire on accident 2 years ago. So risen vampires pre the present were very rare. It was hard. It was something that happened somewhere in the world once a year, it wasn't common.
Now, it is possible for you to have been bitten by a risen vampire and go to
Absolutely.
Calidran. Because as we said about risen culture, if you guys read on the website, sometimes risen vampires don't know what the fuck they're doing. And they'll go turn like 30 people because they're hungry and don't realize that they're turning people. And you could be a misfit who's never met your sire. You hear about this place called Calidran and you're like, yo, that's a place to start a new life. Because I don't know what I'm doing and I need help. So, anything's kind of possible if you really think about it. And if you have an idea for a vampire and it doesn't fit the mold of what we're saying, and you were like, hey, I want them to be part of Calidran or any vampire thing at all, make a ticket, specifically tag me and Naku, because we put so much time into this shit. Naku did so much culture shit. I did so much mechanical shit. We want you guys to enjoy them if you choose to play Vampies in your Vampy game. Ash Spawn asks, if we are 4th gen, could we have 5th gen NPCs? Yeah, you can write in your kids. Your vampiric children. I don't care.
It's just the sort of thing where, like, if you want an admin to play them, it would have to be during your admin assisted event. We're not gonna passively make world flavor of your kid or your grandkid for you. But if you want to, sure. That said, it's important to mention most Khaledric clans do not use human terms of like father, son, and uncle.
Yeah.
You
It's
have
sire,
vampiric
grandsire.
siblings. You would refer to somebody who was turned by your sire as your vampiric sibling. But other than that, that's really the only one. It's sire, sireling, sire lines. They're a descendant of my sireling is something you would say if someone's like 2 or 3 generations removed from you. But some of them do because they want it. They that's just how they fucking are. So if you want to have one that's sort of adopted a family structure because they just like it, that's fine. Just know that that's not the cultural norm. It's very most clans are kind of like formal allegiances and operate more like businesses than they do families. But these are also all the people that you spend your goddamn time with. So it's a little, you know, you're real close to them. You got blood bonds with them. Their bad mood becomes your bad mood.
Yasad asks, can someone from Cali do something so heinous elsewhere that the Red Masks would be sent out to investigate? Probably not,
The red
unless you're
masks
going around
are
claiming to be the progenitor.
yeah. So the important thing to think about the red masks is the distinction between the Navy and the Guard is kind of like FBI versus CIA. The Guard is strictly domestic issues. You're never really going to see guards off of Qalidran unless they're escorting somebody. So if you're a noble who's like 4th, 5th removed, you might travel around with somebody who's got a gray mask. You might have a guard with you. If one of the descendants was walking around, they would have somebody with a gray mask with a red mask with them. They would go around with their
Or
legion
like
of red
8 of them,
masks. Yes.
or 10 or 20 or 200.
Yeah, the descendants going out on a walk is, I think, comical. They have in the range of 20 to 30 guards with them, and they dress exactly like their guards. So you'll see a gaggle of red masks and be like, "There's a descendant in there somewhere. God knows who it is, but one
Or
of
if a
them."
descendant wants to fuck with you guys, they'll just send 30 Red Masks out and not go.
Yeah.
Like
So
the descendants are people too.
yeah, but if anything, if you were being sought out, like if you are lying about being a descendant in like Saloon and Calidran gets word of it, they would probably send parts of the Navy. If anyone, the 4th descendant would come themselves. The 4th descendant might appear with Sunderfin just on the shore one day and be like, "Yes, hello, I've heard you're out here lying." So if anything, the Navy might come hunt you down, but they're very, very insular. So unless you're directly lying about being the progenitor, being related to the progenitor, or something like that, they're not going to show up. And if they do show up, it's probably just going to be to rock your shit once and be like, "Fucking knock it off," tell everyone around you that you're full of shit, and then they leave.
Can someone be turned by non-Caldran named vampires in lore? Could someone roll in as the heir to Myverius the Imposter? We typically tell people, if it's written in canon, that with the exception of the vampire or the progenitor and the descendants, because that's how we wrote vampire lore, that you can be descended from them. We typically try to stray away from people being directly related to notorious written people who are still active in the world. If you want to be a human who is a luminous worshiper, descended from the great prophet Gabriel, he died fucking hundreds of years ago. Knock your socks off. But, you know, yeah. Any other big brain questions from y'all? How many fangs can they have? They need to have at least 2, because we say they need to have fangs plural. If your vampire wants to have turned every tooth into a fang-like tooth, go for it.
Being defanged is like how they punish people. Like if you do something fucked up, but not so fucked up that they're gonna kill you, they might defang you and then send you to shore. Good luck surviving with no teeth. So getting your fangs pulled is that's like the biggest shame. It's like being like tarred and feathered. They'll defang you in the public square.
Without the death.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's probably people in the Vampire Hunters Guild who have collections of fangs that they've taken from vampires they've killed.
They
We
burn
talked
that.
a
They'll
lot
burn
of
your fang hole with silver, and then it can't grow back. So
yeah.
I want
We
you
talked
guys
a
to
lot
take
about
silver damage
Qalidran.
seriously this season.
Oh yeah, silver bad.
Silver bad. Silver
Uh,
ow.
was Dracula in terms of vampire hierarchy and actual power stronger than the Descendants? That is a fantastic question. Um, the only descendant who faced Dracula in battle was the fourth descendant, and Sunderfin sent Dracula packing. Now, Dracula at the zenith of his power, the apex, right before he died. Who knows? Find out in character. Was Dracula so powerful? Why are the descendants so powerful? All beautiful lore things for you guys to find out. Squid, what does vampiric regeneration actually look like? It depends on how you want to flavor it.
Yep. I think that's a you
If
question.
you want to have lost a hand and that hand never grew back, no matter how many times you reconstitute, go for it. If you want to be able to reconstitute with your missing limbs back, power to you. Sounds like a bloodline thing that you should write into your character. What roles do non-vampires play in the slums, Naku?
Super, super fucking limited. Less than 2% of Qalidran's population is, like, city population is Mitts and Talum. They're very, very, very rare. So a lot of times they're specifically brought to the island to, like, do something. Like, there's some, vampire who's a chaos mage, and they're like, oh, fuck, I really want to study chaos magic. And then they stumble across a chaos-flavored mitt, and they're like, cool, come join my clan. I want to study you. I want us to do magic together. That's, like, how most non-vampires get brought into the city. They're exceptionally rare, and you wouldn't really find them in the slums, because they would not be granted access on their own. If you are a non-vampire in the city, 1, you can't be human, because you'd be on a farm. 2, you can't be a werewolf, because they'd kill your ass at the door. So if you're a Talum or a Mitt, you were probably brought in by somebody.
And you're probably in the garden at a minimum.
Yeah, you'd probably be in the garden or in the terrace. It would be really weird for them to just fill up space in the slums arbitrarily with, like, non-vampires, because, again, they think themselves superior.
Interestingly enough, the way that vampires in Caldron found out about mitts was a mitt was pretending to be a human, and they took the mitt, and the mitt put up no resistance because the mitt didn't understand that they were being taken somewhere, and they went to go draw its blood, and they were like, "Oh, there's no blood." So yeah, mitt shenanigans happen in Caldron. Do vampires even need to keep their internal organs, heart? I'm guessing yes for the stake for the heart. Everything else can't be removed or replaced. We had this discussion last night. You need a brain. Everything else is optional.
None of your organs function. You could not be a vampire with a beating heart. I'm so sorry. It doesn't work that way. Your organs do not function. They all did.
You do not need a heart. You can have a vampire without a heart. The whole stake thing, that's not in our lore. They're weak to silver. They are allergic to garlic. They burn in the sun. Fopsy asks, how do vampires being called to Vardor get there from Caldran? The Navy will escort you via boat. You will probably dock somewhere that's not Brighthaven, probably in Oakvale. Because Brighthaven is scary.
They'll dump your ass on the coast of Frankelberg, and then you're on your own from there. You can, like, you can special request the Navy to take you somewhere and then pay them resources to take you somewhere. That's something that's common. So if you want to be, like, somebody who's some hoity-toity noble from a specific clan, and you're like, yeah, I paid the Navy to bring me to fucking Brighthaven, you can do that. That's fine.
Yeah. Vamps don't bleed, vamps do bleed. And the reason that you don't need a heart is because your innate blood magic, because remember, all vampires have to have some kind of blood magic, circulates the blood through you. Scuba vampires are real because vampires don't need to breathe. It probably feels really fucking weird, but what do you think the fourth descendant does when Sunderfin wants to go underwater?
Yeah.
He fucking rides that bitch.
He underwater. He in the ocean with the motion.
He vampire Aquaman, my friend. If you're part of the Navy, yes. If you're anyone else in the world, no. Fren is not friend-shaped. Fren is the size of the island. Sunderfin is Naku's best friend.
And I was really
Out
excited
of
when
character.
Apples and I came up with Sunderfin. I was like, this is the stupidest, best thing we've ever done. Giant sea snake is the reason for naval supremacy is hilarious. Because how do you fight snake that come up and eat your boat in one bite? You don't.
Now, the real question is Sunderfin the fish of Pissivol? Naku, answer the question.
I played the fifth.
He's a serpent, not a fish. He can't be the fish.
The fish is a religion. We also realized that we didn't put the religions page up. That's coming this weekend. So we'll have in-depth breakdowns of Luminan's faith, the fish faith, the sun and moon faith that is in Saloon and only Saloon. We'll have a dedicated tab for religions this weekend. Thanks for your patience. We forgo.
Along with the timeline. What does this mean for Finn the Fisherman's Sea Serpent? Are they related to Sunderfin? We will be dropping some baseline monster lore. I think also this weekend. Potts is headlining that. There are more than just one sea serpent in the world. Compared to Sunderfin, they are small and they are bitch made. Sunderfin is a vampiric sea serpent. He is a thrall.
Yeah, they
Or not really a thrall, but
anyone who's playing a vampire that's like in the ballpark of 300 to 250 years old, you would know that Sunderfin used to be smaller. And then after the fourth descendant found it, they basically fed it like pure protein and crack cocaine, and now it's fucking massive.
Yeah, Sunderfin's a gym bro. Not really, but he is. Do we choose where we start on the map as vampires? I remember seeing a bit about being a citizen of Dunley or Farbane, etc. Is that just a thing for humans? I believe that as a vampire, the only place you cannot start is Brighthaven. I believe you can be a citizen of just about anywhere else.
They can't be a citizen of Brighthaven, and if you're a citizen of Dunley, it's because they don't know you're a vampire. So if you get found out and are doing loud vampire things, like posting about how vampire you are on the waygates, we will remove your citizenship. So that's something to keep in mind.
Not a vampire question. Is there a pantheon of gods included in these religions? There may be gods from different cultures. Is there a pantheon of gods of the world, a la Forgotten Realms D&D stuff? No, we're not gonna write out a whole pantheon of gods for you guys. We're kind of steering away from the whole pre-writing a shit ton of god lore because no one has really ever used it.
We found that like last
yeah.
season we rolled in with like 12 different religions, and I think I saw people use 2 of them over the course of the whole arc. People that want to lean into religious shenanigans tend to want to do it with their own. So we'll have really, I think, just 4 religions that are in the religion tab. So it'll be very limited compared to past things, and it'll be more directly informed by like countries. So, like if you're from Saloon, you've got Saloon religion. If you're from a Luminance country, you've got Luminance. If you're from Fish country, you've got Fish, etc., etc.
Any other fantastic questions? You guys have been a great audience. Someone needs to ask some questions just to hurt Tansy's wrists, please. I will give you one. We can't say V-Bucks because that's copyrighted. I will give you 1 gold coin. Would clans be allowed to have their own terms and customs?
Yeah. Do it.
Yeah, let's try to keep things English, please. You know, we are an English first server. But if you wanna call your sireling fucking Glorbo, go for it. All the mainline Qalidran vampires will just roll their eyes at you. Not a normal question. What is it with people asking how Talam tastes and if it's vegan? Where are the humans who eat vampires? Humans who eat vampires are weird because they're corpses. Vampires think that Talam tastes weird. How is garlic treated in Qalidran if smuggled in by Navy dipshit who thought it was funny? That Navy dipshit would probably be thrown in the 5th hell. Like, no questions asked.
I don't know.
Parks and Rec style, straight to jail.
There was a big there's a thing in Wellruns. Wellruns' fun fact is that pretending that onion seeds are garlic seeds is a capital crime because it led to the death of a bunch of people because they were hanging onions in their windows. This, by contrast, is rewarded with money. If you manage to sell a human onions and say that they're garlic, you can prove it, you get paid.
Will we have a MIT meeting at some point for more fun facts? Yes, Vlur and I at some point will do a MIT meeting. When that will be, I don't know. Tansy asks, what is the fifth hell? Naku, go ham.
The fifth hell is a prison that is located, it's basically the bottom floor of the terrace. It is a prison where people are thrown into to starve, essentially. So it's a prison, there's no way in, there's no way out, except for like one door. You're thrown into the prison, good luck, have fun. And so you're only put in there for capital crimes, and the expectation is you'll either be eaten by the vampires that are in there because they're all starving because they don't put food in there, or you wither to death and you die from starvation. So it's the sort of thing where they might be like, yeah, you're sentenced to the fifth hell for 200 years. They don't expect you to live 200 years. You are sent into the fifth hell to die. So it's kind of the overhanging threat where red masks will come for you and they'll take you to the fifth hell and nobody will ever see you again. In the notable places section of Qalidran on the website.
If you live for 200 years, do you get out? If you live for 200 years and you're still sane, you get out.
Yeah, it would be a fucked up experience though, and they wouldn't exactly come to find you. You'd have to like catch somebody while they were throwing someone else in and be like, hey, my name's Joe. I was thrown in here 200 years ago. I'm pretty sure my sentence is over. And then they'll check. And they'll compare your blood with the blood that they took when you went in. And they'll be like, okay, it is you. Your sentence is over. Congratulations. And then you get thrown into the slums or off the island, depending on what you did.
Yeah, if someone wants to play a vampire who survived the fifth hell and got exiled, sure. Snow, I answered your question before you even posted it. And Squid. Wow, I'm just that good. Am I the Emperor Eggman? No, because I'm in exile, but I could be.
Want to be a fifth hell survivor, you will have to please open an RPO ticket first so we can approve what your crime was, because it's below execution, but also we kind of want you to die. So because it's basically an informal execution. So because if you did something really bad, like if you went against the royal family, they're not even gonna bother throwing you into the fifth hell. They're just gonna fucking kill you. So
they're not even gonna say anything. They're just gonna shut off your misbrazier.
Yep.
And probably erase your whole bloodline from existence.
That's the other thing, is if you go against the royal family, they do just kill your entire sigil. So.
Mm-hmm. Is the fifth hell the domain of the fifth descendant?
Sure is, because the fifth descendant is the head of the guard. So the fifth hell is directly under the jurisdiction of the fifth descendant. It's said that there's rumors that the fifth descendant will go on walks through the fifth hell and kill everybody they come across. This is true. So if you've been there, you could have seen them doing this, but you definitely didn't survive a direct confrontation with the fifth descendant. They like to go through the fifth hell and kill people for fun. So you could have seen that as a distance if you're a survivor.
Does that mean you're begging? Yeah, you are. If you plead the fifth, you're begging for mercy. The fifth descendant is like going through the fifth hell. It was like if you played Elden Ring, he's like Godfrey all the time, but then he turns into Horaloo when he goes into the fifth hell. He just rips off the fucking cordialness.
Written about the five descendants and what kind of fucking people they are and what they get up to in the inner palace, guys. We got so much good. I'm so excited.
We want you guys to study vampires. So even if you guys aren't planning on playing a vampire, we have prepared, all of the people who wrote all the races have prepared stuff for you guys to research, study, look into. We are far more prepared this season, as Vlur said in the big community meeting, than we have been prepared for any other season for you guys to look into stuff. So please, if there's something you're even remotely interested in, make an RPO ticket. Make it sooner than later. That way we know what the community is interested in, so we can be better prepared for you guys to do stuff.
Drithis asked, considering the aforementioned nature of magics this season, how open can vampires practice their magics? Like, would they have a park to practice practical non-destructive spells, or would they need to have a space to practice that? I imagine that Qalidran has every space that a player would create in like season. So they probably have public arenas. They probably have public bars where people spar in the corner. Like anything that players would do on the regular, it's probably happening somewhere in Qalidran. So they absolutely have their own arenas. They've got places. There's people that teach magic to new vampires. Like that's what they do. They work in the garden, and they've got pretty decent blood, or now the new school's expertise as they build up those schools, and they teach other vampires how to use their blood magic, or now they're teaching them how to use shadow and all of the others. The only one that I would say would probably be frowned upon practicing in public would be holy enlightenment, like the holy light magic. If you're somebody that's into that, Qalidran as a whole probably frowned in your general direction. But with that exception, yeah, people are openly practicing magic right now. It's the hot new thing. With the
The
information,
thing about Calidran,
sorry, go ahead.
really quick, um, we talked a lot about the parlor, a lot about the descendants, a lot about the framework of it, but there's probably about 10,000 vampires in Calidran, and they're not all part of that system. You could be any kind of vampire that you really want and have existed in Calidran. There are probably vampires who are gardeners, who are outside of the harvest, and they just do it as a hobby. There are probably vampires who are trying to make tea that is edible by vampires, since vampires really can't taste anything. There are scientists, there are researchers, there are scholars, there are musicians, there are everything there. You don't have to play in the Game of Thrones kind of political shit to be from Calidran.
Really, the Game of Thrones political shit is centered around the parlor. People that aren't members of the parlor, whether they be just dudes that live in the garden, they're not somebody, but they've lived in Calidran long enough, they've been loyal long enough that now they have their own house in the garden region. There's you can be just a guy who lives there, who owns you own a bakery. Not that anyone can eat bread, but you make bread specifically for people to smell, and then they sit in your parlor and they smell your bread, and then you send your bread to the human settlements to be consumed by humans. Like anything that you can think of that fits within just like general vampire framework, you can have done in Qalidran. It's very flexible. Anything happens in the garden region. Any kind of store that you can think of.
You can be a vampire who like genuinely really likes humans and be from Qalidran, because they do take really good care of their humans. Like the Harvest like humans, as long as they're healthy. Anyway, continue with the questions, Naka.
Yeah.
Sorry for the derailment.
No, it's a good information. With the information of the region, is it possible for us players to write a smaller region? Like, for example, we have enough time to pitch a small region that is homebrewed. So if you want to make your own country, you're doing so with the understanding that it is not enough of a political powerhouse, or does not have enough international significance to be on the world map. Because the world map is made by the world map we posted is made by the Archivum. So it's everybody that's politically relevant to the Archivum. So if you're from like a small nation, you can be from like the Basalt Flats, or from like the coast between Frankelberg and Qalidran. Just know that for power gaming purposes, if you want to be from a homebrew region, it's either so geographically small that it's not on the map, or politically irrelevant to the point that it's not on the map. Keep in mind that this is a complete world map. So you cannot say that you're from a country that's the size of the Eastern continent, because we would have that on the map, right? So, do things within reason. If you want to make your own country, though, go off. We've always let people homebrew their own countries. That's part of the reason why our map isn't border to border filled. We've got a lot of open space on there, so you can be from this random mountain range, or be from this area. So there's a lot of empty spaces for people to be from. So yeah, go crazy. Just keep in mind that for power gaming reasons, especially if you want to be the leader of a region that you're from, we won't put homebrew regions on the map. If you wanted a homebrew region to be on the map, you should have submitted it as server lore.
The other reason why is because I am not adding in. We have over 100 active players. I'm not adding in that much shit to the world map. It took me 3 days to make this one and make it pretty. I'm not spending any more time until next season, when I make it even prettier.
What is a famous specialty in the region you guys can recommend for potential vampire players? Vampires love blood magic. Blood magic is like their biggest, baddest, most like historically like relevant kind of magic. So there's a lot of blood magic professionals from Qalidran. The Navy always needs weapons, so blacksmiths are also very common in Qalidran, because they're trying to invent newer, better, deadly things so they can go kill the Vampire Hunter Guild even better.
Do courts share rumors and gossip about the descendant's favorite bloods to drink? Does this cause vampires to drink specific blood type because it's cool now? Fuck yes. Fuck yes, they do. Um, Snow asks, if you survive the fifth hell, could you have seen the fifth descendant without a mask? If you have seen the fifth descendant's face, you are dead.
I'll say he does go
it-
down there in full regalia with his guards. So if you've seen him, you know that he's a man and you know he's very tall. And that's all you know about him. And he murders people dead. But if you've seen him close enough to like get the contours of his jaw, you're dead. You've seen him from a distance and then you ran in the other direction probably.
Do vampire organs immediately turn to dust when removed? That is a great question. I don't think we've discussed that at length. I think no, because I think that there's potential for cool rituals with vampire parts.
Yeah, I think that's kind of up to you. Like, do you want, if your bloodline, maybe they're bad at holding themselves together when their parts are not touching. So if you take out your lung, it disappears. If you,
The reason I
it's
say
up to
it
you,
is
I say.
the reason I say it too is Vampire Hunter Guild people have vampire fangs around their neck. So obviously not every, and teeth are technically organs, I think. I don't know. I'm not a scientist. But no, they don't all turn to dust. So bloodline thing for you. If a human is capable of light magic in his turn, will they lose their ability to use the light magic?
I was talking about this with Fleur. You wouldn't outright lose it, but you'd probably get demoted. So if you get turned as an expert, you would go back down to being like an adept. Or if you were turned as an adept, you'd lose it entirely. Because the way that you cast it is going to be fundamentally changed. So if you're turned as a tier 3, you're going to jump back down to tier 2. If you're turned as a tier 2, you're going to jump down to tier 1. Because you have to figure out how to light magic as a vampire for science reasons. So if you've put a fuck ton of time into it as a human, we probably won't outright take it away from you, but it'll probably be harder and you'll have to relearn it.
We are coming up in 10 minutes on 2 hours for the Vampy meeting because Naku was on time just barely. She made it by skin of her pants.
I was 3 minutes late, and we usually gab for that long anyway, so I was on time.
I will be shutting this meeting in 10 minutes, so if you do have any final lingering questions, please ask them.
Yes. I've got, I don't know, I get cute girl privilege, question mark? I will do a werewolf Q&A with Tony probably sometime next week. And then Apple's Iaru, Art, and I will also be doing a just general Q&A on all country lore. So if you want to know more about like day-to-day life and what we have envisioned, because we couldn't write everything that we came up with because it was just too long. We trimmed the fat a lot on the countries. So if you have questions about country lore, we will be having a meeting for that where people can just ask questions about any country, with the exception of Qalidran, because we had this. And then, though I guess if you have burning questions, I can answer them there too. And then we'll also have a meeting on myths. We'll also have a meeting on werewolves. We're just trying not to have them too many days in a row. we have got 2 weeks before whitelists open, so we got time.
We're probably not gonna do one on humans because humans are just so broad. If you have human questions, open an RPO ticket.
Yep. Snow asked, is there a Diablery type thing that can happen? So if you were to eat your sire fully, would your blood improve in quality closeness to the progenitor? No. You would just be left with a blood bond, and you'd probably be shunned for eating your, like, dad. You know?
Yeah.
Like, people would be like, dude, what the fuck? There's no way to move up the bloodline. That's not how it works. Vampires in Qalidran do have a very deep-set belief that you are literally more powerful as a vampire the closer you are to the progenitor. How true that is a find out in character, though.
No, we're not using the your sire's your father mother thing in general. They use sireling, the descendant of my sireling, so on and so forth until the end of time. But if you're from a clan that wants to do that. We're not going to stop you. It's the same thing I said to Ashspawn's question. If you want to call your sireling a Glorbo or whatever, you can do it. The mainstream Calidric vampires are just going to roll their eyes at you, probably think you're lesser, and say that you're maidenless behind your back.
I'd
What's your face?
say language-wise, probably 90% of collegiate clans use like sire sireling and just kind of consider themselves to be like friends and allies within clans, and then 10% of them are like, this is my dad. But they're
What are some
definitely the
common
minority.
insults for vampires? Bitch maid. You heard it here first.
Insinuating that somebody is a risen vampire or of a risen bloodline,
Yes.
devastating if you're in the parlor. Insulting somebody's mask, saying that it looks cheap or not made by like a high quality artisan, or their feathers look like they're dyed. That's a really big thing in the parlor. Yeah, you can call risen vampires slurs if you want, as long as they don't mirror any real life slurs for any real life people, like bitch maid.
I would say you just call people bitch maid. We are not gonna list slurs that you can call things. Just not something that we want to devote time to. Make up your own, have some originality.
They
I'm
probably
not going
just
to tell you
say
how to talk shit about people.
he's risen, and then everyone else goes, ugh.
Yeah, there's a really easy one. It's risen.
It's on the tin.
Like it's just gross.
You know, underhandedly implying that risen vampires are stinky or rotting somehow, even if they aren't. Very common. Insinuating that somebody is like rotting is also insinuating that they're a risen vampire, so that's an insult. Being like, I can smell your organs. Gross.
Yeah, Snow is right. Risen is the slur. It's
Yep.
risen or it's bitch made. And you can get 98% of vampires pissed off with those two. Well,
Yeah.
risen vampires can have been very old corpses who were raised by blood magic.
Yep. So risen vampires, you don't have to be. But if you were, let's say you died and they buried you, and then you've been dead for 30 years, and then 5 years ago there was a blood magic shenanigans directly above your grave, and now you're a vampire rising from the soil. Your body is fucked up. You're mostly bones. It's going to take you a while to like regenerate yourself. It may never happen. So sometimes risen vampires look like they've been dead a while because they were dead a while. So not everyone who is risen looks stinky, but you can be. So if you want to be like missing chunks of your cheeks and shit and be like look like you're a little zombie boy, you can do that as a risen vampire. Yeah, Gravespawn. Gravespawn is a very, very good insult for a risen vampire. I'm writing that shit down for me. Because my noble's gonna be mean.
Naku speaks loudly and carries a small stick.
Excuse me? What the fuck does that mean?
Well, so it's the speak softly and carry a large stick. It's like be dangerous, but be soft spoken. You're not dangerous, but you'll bitch someone out until the end of the earth.
Listen. I know I'm bad at this game, so I've mastered the art of pocket sand. I miss you, Grump. Come back to me. I want to use you as a blunt force object.
You miss Frank too.
I miss Frank too. That's my favorite meme. That I think Squid made it. Let me see if I have it, because it makes me fucking giggle every time I see it.
When someone pisses off the judge and then Frank takes control.
Yes. Players not fearing the judge, and then it's just Frank reaching for the ball. I'd be like, Frank, will you drive for this event? And he'd be like, yes, Naku, that's fine. And I would be so happy. I would be so happy to use blunt forced object Frank. I can't find it.
My favorite was when me and Frank took out the hyphae.
Yeah!
And just started spawn camping people.
My favorite was when people were like, I could tell that they were metaing a little bit, that they thought the judge was me during that final event, where they're like, well, the judge is not that big of a threat. And then the judge rocked their shit, and it was like, oh no, the judge is a threat! Because they thought it was me driving her, and it was not. That's not what I was looking for, but that is very funny.
Any other questions for the gallery? All right. Like I said before, Qalidran's cool. I love it. Naku loves it. It's awesome. Sunderfin is my homie. But it's not the only thing with vampires. If you have a vampire who you want to play, who you're not sure how it fits in, open a ticket. We're happy to help you. Please play vampires in your vampire games because we put in a lot of love to this. And if you're not playing a vampire, look into them because they're really fucking cool. After all, they have had magic longer than anyone else, which means everyone else compared to them is bitch made. Only cool kids can use blood magic. All peace and love, and we will see you guys later.
Bye. Thanks for coming.